as long as there's been technology, I'm pretty sure there has also been suspicion of technology. I'm sure there was some caveman who was like, we've been eating cooked food for the last 10 years, and you know what? I feel like my jaw's getting really weak, and I think we should go back to chewing the raw food. And plus, the kids' brains are getting bigger, and who knows what that's going to lead to. But with that said, I have found that there is something really calming when life is really hectic and stressful, that spending more of your time with things that feel real and tangible and physical and don't involve screens has really helped my mental state of being. And like many people, I'm constantly trying to reduce my time using screens. So even though some things might be more efficient if you do it on your phone or your tablet, but I find that for all the efficiency that I might gain, I also lose something. This is just how I feel. So recently I was trying to think how to solve the problem, which talk about a modern problem, but I kept waking up and just messing around on my cell phone for like 30, 40 minutes before I did anything else, and getting very depressed and just like wasting half the morning before it even begins. And it occurred to me that why do you have your cell phone with you? It's to have a clock. So maybe you should just get a clock. So I found this little clock at the thrift store, and not only is it a real clock, but it ticks. And one thing that I didn't realize is that this actually really calms me down, just hearing the clock ticking all night. Now I've just got this little clock, has a little alarm. Every night I wind it, and it's kind of soothing. It reminds me of the cuckoo clock that used to be in the hallway when I was a kid that my dad would wind. Do you want to be petted or do you want to battle? Pet or battle? Kind of both. So I entered a puzzle competition a few months ago, and me and my friend won the puzzle competition. And I read up in advance on what is the best way to win, and it said that sorting up front is really important. So I spread everything out, and I'm starting to sort them onto boards based on color. This has taken me 37 minutes to get them all turned over, and that includes messing around with the cats. So, Okay. Sorting the puzzle took exactly an hour. And I think I burned my little lunch. No, it doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna eat my lunch. It's this jollof rice with chicken, and I'm gonna add some cucumbers. Yeah, I definitely did burn the bottom. Whoopsie. I think I'm gonna put a little pickle juice on that. Yummy garlic cloves out of there. Despite being overcooked, it's actually pretty good. It's kind of a little crunchy. And the pickle juice is what makes it. These African dishes, this brand is one of my favorite for like frozen meals, and they taste really good with a little pickled something with them. Whoops. It is now day 4 of working on my puzzle. If you have cats, you'll know that it takes a while to do a puzzle because you'll start it and then all of a sudden a cat will show up wanting to get involved in the puzzle, and you'll have to hastily cover it up and get back to it later when the cats are sleeping. But coming along pretty nicely. What I love about puzzles is, I've been having a lot of anxiety this month, and for a week or two, I found myself, again, just spending the morning looking at the internet and getting stressed out before my day had even begun. But when I have a puzzle started, my brain is like, I gotta get to that puzzle. Gotta get some pieces down before I get to my day. And it's really addictive. I definitely think you can get this experience in non-analog ways because video games often fulfill kind of a similar function for me, but I also spend a lot of my day on screens. So what I like about a puzzle is it gives me that like cozy gaming vibe, like just kind of calm, repetitive motions and like just the satisfaction of getting little accomplishments done, but it does not involve a screen. Magical. Hi, Coco. Uh-oh, maybe I'm not going to get any pieces done because I talked to the camera and now I got Coco. Hello, friends. What prompted this video particularly is I was watching a video on the channel Not Buying It, and his channel is kind of like about psychology of marketing and how it works on our brains and makes us want to buy things, etc. So I was watching a video and he was talking about how difficult it is to find a space where there is no branding, because even most of our clothes and products, like even if you're on a hike in the woods, you probably have branding on your clothes, your water bottle, your pack, anything that you have. And if you have a friend with you, they probably also have brands on them. So you're always looking at brands no matter where you go. And that is not something I had really thought about before, but it's one of those things where it kind of clicked in my brain and I thought that's an interesting point. I do feel like I'm being assaulted by ads so much nowadays compared to when I was younger, which was still like, this isn't new that we have a lot of advertising in our lives, but it has escalated in the last several decades. Like when you look at pictures of people in the 70s before I was born, clothes were not really branded so much yet. Even in the 80s, it was only just starting to be a thing. Nowadays, it's not just your clothes and your shoes and your products. It's also oftentimes the art you experience. When I watch a movie, it's often through some kind of service that puts ads in the movie. When I listen to music on my Spotify playlist, there's ads. When I watch YouTube, there's ads. There's a way to get around the ads, which is to pay a bunch of subscription services, but those are your choices. Pay subscription fees on multiple services or experience a constant assault of your playlist gets interrupted by that ad for a podcast about Ozempic and a cruise line, which can really break your mojo when you're writing and you have your writing playlist and all of a sudden you have to hear on your headphones about a cruise line. But I don't want to pay, so I put up with it. And same deal if you're reading stuff on the internet, there are so many ads popping up on your devices all the time. Every article you click on, you barely even think about it these days to click, like, get that ad out of here. There's an ad in my way. Click, where's that little X? Get rid of the X. There's just ads everywhere. And as a novelist, one of the things I'm always trying to protect is that creative space, especially when I'm in the zone, right? Like, I'm in a fantasy world in my head and I'm in my characters' lives and I don't want to lose that zone. And sure, like one ad on Spotify is not going to break me out of the zone. Even 100 ads isn't going to break me out of the zone. But it is like, just like little pings on your attention that can keep you from really staying deep into your work. Hence the beauty of analog things. And there are a number of other reasons that I love to have at least a part of my life kind of sectioned off and protected in this analog space. The lack of ads is one of the beauties of it. I have hundreds of records and hundreds of CDs, and sometimes I do need a playlist, especially when I am writing. But I often do listen just to my record and CD collection. particularly have this theory with records that if something is all analog, if it was recorded in an analog way and then pressed onto an analog record. I looked this up. I couldn't find that anyone has ever done a study on it, but I swear that my brain processes analog music more like it's a live musician in my house. There's just something about it that I get this warm feeling like David Bowie is in my living room, whereas when I'm listening to CDs, like, it's still good. It's still good music, but there's something in my soul that doesn't hit the same way. It doesn't register in the same way. So I have this theory about records, particularly before anybody was like really involving digital compression. You know, I'm not like a sound engineer, so I'm not sure all the processes involved, but like records from the 70s, they just like, they hit me like somebody's in my room with me. And I kind of feel like that about everything. There have been studies done that if you write down things in a notebook or on paper versus typing them in a computer, that affects your brain differently and is like more creative. So I write all my novels on the computer. I'm not that much of a glutton for punishment, but I take all my notes in a physical notebook. I do all of my edits on a physical copy of the manuscript, as well as like I might make notes on a piece of paper on the side. I do all my outlines on paper. Basically all the like deep brain work that goes into the development of a story before I actually sit down to write it, that is all done on paper. And I can't do it any other way, but I really feel like my brain processes that better. I also like to keep some physical books around for inspiration when I'm writing and I need to get a sense of like what a castle would look like or what a house, what a landscape. I like to have some books of like photography and art. Sometimes just like to thumb through them, especially when I need inspiration either for my own sketches or for describing something visual in a novel. I still end up doing a lot of internet research, of course, because you can't always anticipate what you're going to need, and sometimes you just need something in the moment. But I think there's also something about turning the physical pages and seeing photography on paper that sparks my brain in a different way. I also read all novels. I don't really use e-readers, this is not a judgment. Like, if you enjoy reading on an e-reader, by all means, there's certainly plenty of benefits to it. The whole reason that I don't read books in ebook form is purely because I just don't seem to process the information the same way. I really feel like I need the paper, and the way that I interact with the book as I'm reading, I tend to flip around quite a bit, like looking back to see what I missed or looking ahead, like how long is this chapter? I do that a lot. I don't know why, but it's just like one of those twitchy habits I have as a reader, that I like to be able to kind of go backwards and forwards and thumb through it a little bit, interact with it physically. So I do really prefer paper books, and I just feel like I retain the book and enjoy the book better when it's on paper. And yes, this does even translate to little things, like when I bought a washing machine, I really wanted one with just regular old dials. I like to have tangible dials rather than like screens and digital displays as much as possible. Based on some videos I've seen and conversations I've seen on the internet, I am by far not the only person who prefers to have a certain sense of like tangible and analog things in their life. I'm really not sure why it is sometimes. I don't consider myself super resistant to technology. I definitely have a lot of it around. I'm just careful about what I adopt. I was very, very slow to get a smartphone because I was already pretty addicted to the internet and I really did not want to carry the internet around with me everywhere. I finally was sort of forced into a smartphone in 2020. Yes, that's how long it took me to get a smartphone. And I did not actually get a real cell phone plan until 2021. So that is how long I fought the good fight on that one. When I was a kid, teen, like before the internet came along, you'd encounter people who would sort of proudly and smugly declare that they did not have a television. And that was sort of the pre-internet technology that people would act like, well, that's just brain rot. It doesn't bring anything into your life. When I think of the anti-television person, I think of like a hippie couple that aren't very much fun. So that's one reason I'm not like, I don't want to be that person who is like, that's not good for you. We also my generation certainly also experienced that with video games. There was so much alarm over video games rotting kids' brains, and meanwhile I was mentally deep into the Final Fantasy games on Super Nintendo, and they sparked my creativity in so many ways, have been such a huge inspiration to me my entire life. And there are other games that are just like relaxing to me. I've played Civilization through so many traumatic events in my life, waiting at the hospital for my partner to get out of surgery, or when I was having panic attack or whatever. Civilization has gotten me through some of the worst times in my life. So I am definitely not anti-technology. And I also think that humans have historically almost never won a collective battle against technology. But I definitely feel like the internet and social media are sort of like sugar. Do I eat sugar? Absolutely. Every day I have sugar. But do I have, sort of mental practices in place to ensure that I do not eat too much sugar? Yes, absolutely. I don't just eat all the sugar I want. There are certain things, like I almost never drink soda, and I don't often buy a lot of sugary junk food just to have hanging around. I try to use discipline when it comes to eating sugar, and I kind of feel like the internet is like that because it was pretty easy to not have a television. You might be the least fun person in a friend group if you were the person that doesn't have a television and could not discuss the latest episode of Seinfeld, but you could certainly get by in society without a television. You could get the newspaper and you'd get all your news that way. You don't have to watch the nightly news to get your news. You could have a radio if you needed like weather information up to the minute now and then, right? You're basically just missing out on like entertainment. Social media is different. The internet, smartphone, social media, they are different. They are very hard to avoid. So rather than thinking delusionally that I'm going to somehow avoid these things completely, especially as a writer who is going to make her living by marketing myself on social media, there's no way that I'm going to get to exist in some kind of anti-capitalist bartering utopia where I trade my very particular fantasy novel for like plumbing services or food. It's just no way is that going to work for me. But I like to carve out those spaces in my life that just feel like I've gotten away from it all. And I'm doing a puzzle. I got a record on in the background. I'm reading a physical book while sitting by a sunny window, making myself a little lunch, cutting up some fresh vegetables. I've got my vintage clothing wardrobe, which has no logos, just not really part of the analog conversation, but I do think it's a similar sentiment. And carving out that space where there are no ads, no technology, it's not in reach, it's out of sight, out of mind for a little while. I think that has helped me carve out some like calm spaces in a world that can feel chaotic, as well as protecting that creative self, giving it space to just wander off into my own thoughts and not get bombarded by the outside world and marketing and all of that sort of thing. And I know I'm not alone in this because I've watched some other videos. In fact, I know there are even a lot of younger people. It's not just me being like a nostalgic zennial yearning for the pre-internet era, but also that there are people in their 20s that are hearkening back to analog technology or even just physical books and things like that. I'm curious if any of you try to purposefully carve aside some space that's only for like physical objects and is away from all the noise. Is there anything like sort of analog or old-fashioned that you really take comfort in, particularly that I didn't mention? Or is this just more of a temporary trend that future generations are not going to care about, even we ourselves might lose sight of over time? Are we doomed to have this technology assaulting us every moment of our waking and sometimes even sleeping lives? And am I just being the equivalent of the person who doesn't want a television? I find it fascinating to ponder the technology that is optional versus the technology that is forced upon us. Like, televisions are fairly ubiquitous but also optional, whereas cars are very hard to avoid. And I say this as somebody who doesn't drive, that it kind of sucks if you are somebody that absolutely hates driving and feels like you're really bad at it and anxious about it and doesn't want to do it. It is very hard to find affordable places in the United States where you can live without a car. So cars, telephones, electricity, the internet, and the smartphone, I think, are some of the technology that we have a very hard time avoiding once they were introduced and became part of society, versus a lot of other things you could live without if you wanted to. Those are my random thoughts for the day. I hope you enjoyed this little sort of vloggy musing. And if you're new here, my name is Lydia Foxglove. I am a novelist, and I talk about the creative life in general and writing in particular. Sometimes writing craft, and sometimes more like financials, simple life, the emotional life of being an artist, and things like that. So if any or all of that sounds good to you, feel free to stick around. Whoops, I probably messed that up. So if any of that sounds good to you, click that subscribe button, and I'd love to have you here. And if you've been here for a while, I'm so grateful to you. And my stomach keeps growling very noisily, so I guess I better go make lunch. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!